Hi, I'm Evan Goldstein, and I'm your host for Wine Couch TV. On our more classic episodes on this particular show, we oftentimes focus in on a region or a particular varietal and go deeper into it, taste a couple of wines, and obviously talk about the foods that they go with. So today we're going to do one of these more traditional segments, and we're going to focus on a grape from Argentina called Torrontes. Now, Torrontes is a very interesting white wine grape, very aromatic and bright, which is very much in keeping with what's popular in wines in restaurants today, but it's sort of an interesting wine with an interesting heritage. It's a grape that should not be confused, by the way, with the Torrontes grape that you find in northwestern Spain and Galicia, which is a blending type grape that you find oftentimes in Albarino style wines that come from that area. True Torrontes from Argentina is actually a conjoining, if you will, between Criolla Chica, or the traditional mission grape, with the Muscat grape. And years ago, somebody figured out a way to bring those two together, and the result was Torrontes. Now, it's grown throughout the country, but you see it probably at its strength up in Salta, in the far north of the country, and then in La Rioja, which is a little bit further south, and then also in places like Mendoza, and we'll be tasting a wine from this area today. Now, the wine is an extremely rich and voluptuous wine. Texturally, it's fairly unctuous, it's fairly fleshy, it has a nice balanced acidity. It's never what I would call particularly bright, and because of this, when you buy it, you want to buy it and drink it. So if you find bottles in the store, we're in 2009, that say like 2004, 2005, avoid them at all costs. As soon as it hits the market, buy it and drink it. It's absolutely redolent with lots of exotic flavors. You find flavors that go from tangerine to verbena to plumeria to floral characters like freesia and tuberose, sort of gewürzy and muscat-like at the same time, with its own little interesting twist. So, now that I've got you enticed, let's taste a couple of wines. The first wine that we're tasting is the Elsa Bianchi wine, produced by the Valentin Bianchi estate in San Rafael in Mendoza. This is from the 2008 vintage, and like I said before, you find Torrontes everywhere. Mendoza is perhaps not where it's most well known, but this wine at an everyday price point is an extremely good value. Right off the bat, it's like walking into your backyard in the height of floral season. It smells a little bit, like I said before, plumeria. For those of you who are not familiar with it, when you go to Hawaii and you get off the airplane and they put those leis around your neck, you've got that wonderful, exotic, tropical, fragrant things. That's what plumeria is. So imagine that with fresh rose petals and a little bit of sort of a musky character like you'd find in Gewürztraminer, and this wonderful undercurrent of very ripe, almost pear-like fruit, and a bit of sweet citrus, and you've got this wine. In the mouth, the wine is fruity, it's extremely fresh, but it's also pretty much what I would call dry. There's a little hint, sort of a tactile level of residual sugar in there that just really brings up the fruit and makes it seem ripe, although I would still once again call this wine dry. It's got a moderate plus level of body, moderate finish, but not what I would call a long lingering wine. It's very much of a drink me now kind of bottling. Now, the second wine we have is from the far north, from this area called Salta, and it's the 2008 vintage of a wine called Crios, made by a winemaker by the name of Susana Balbo, who's one of the most esteemed winemakers in all of Argentina. The color on this wine is a little bit darker, and that's probably more during the production process, that maybe there's a little bit of skin contact, or macération pelliculaire, as they would say in France. And while the wine is right now perhaps not as flamboyant as the Bianchi, it nevertheless has that same core of really dense, ripe tropical fruit, perhaps a little bit more papaya and a little bit more guava, and again, this wonderful floral backdrop in there that's extremely exotic and quite enticing. The mouth of this wine at this point is much more generous than its nose is, and it's got a wonderful round texture. It's got a really almost sort of lemon curd cum guava jelly or membrillo-like character in the palate, and has a very, very tasty finish. Now, this is a really wonderful wine to play with food. Aside from the fact that it's a great cocktail wine and a great picnic wine, it would go brilliant with everything from, just sandwiches and things like that. This is a great wine to go in two directions. One, sweet and sour dishes. So if you're looking for the quintessential sweet and sour pork wine, or perhaps maybe some pork ribs with a pomegranate molasses glaze and maybe a little bit of soy, This wine would be really good. It would also be good with classically Latino dishes. So everything from sauteed plantains to moqueca de peixe in Brazil would be really, really good. And then if you venture to Southeast Asia, dishes that you'd find from Malaysia and Vietnam would be wonderful. Good Singaporean or Malay rojak, which is sort of a fruit salad, would be an absolute slam dunk with a wine like this. So that's really all we've got to say about Torrontes for today. But before we leave, as always, we'll finish up with our Wine Couch word of the week. And this week's word is Bonarda. Now, Bonarda sounds sort of awkward, but it's the name of a grape. Bonarda is found in many places, but true Argentine Bonarda is the same grape as what you would find in France in an area called Savoie with a grape called Cordoba, or in California a grape called Charbono, which makes sort of a big rustic wine, bright acid, medium body, a little bit spicy, a little bit gruff on the palate, but nevertheless a terrific food wine. Please do not confuse this wine with Bonarda that you find from Italy in Piedmont, which carries the exact same name, but it's a very different grape. So that's all the time we have for this week. I would really encourage you to rush out to your store, get a bottle of Torrontes, enjoy some nice food, some good company, and we'll wait until we see you next time. So until then, you take care.